It's my great pleasure to introduce Arnaud Sartre, who's going to be leading us through the drop-in this evening. Thank you very much, Arnaud. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Janet, and welcome everyone for this wonderful webinar where I will share with you some facts, but also perhaps some ideas on how to run successful club elections. And also we'll have a little bit of a conversation to see how the process could or should happen, because as anything in Toastmasters, we have the process, we have the books, we have the manuals, but we also have the reality of our very clubs. And this is certainly something that we need to take into consideration in everything that we do. So for you today, I have a selection of slides, which I'm sure will be shared after this meeting. And if you're watching this on YouTube, maybe we can put a link on the description or something like that. So let's go right in and share some information with you. And by the way, I would like this to be somewhat interactive, not completely interactive, but at least interactive in some way. So I will have some questions along the way that would be great to participate. So feel free to unmute yourself and shout out some answers or some ideas as we go along. So club officer elections is today's topic. So what we're going to do is cover a very simple 3-point agenda. Why does it matter? How to do it well? And what sort of resources do we have? And of course, at the end of this session, we'll have some Q&A that we can cover. And all of the resource links and information that I will share with you will be linked in these slides as well, which hopefully will be very useful to everyone. So let's dive right in. Why does it matter to have a club officer election? Well, I came up with this little phrase here, which I think probably, I think my opinion at least, encapsulates why it matters and why it matters so much. So club officer elections are often treated as a mandatory checkbox exercise. And of course, it is an exercise that needs to be done. Of course, it checks a box, but that is just the administrative side of things. The club officer election is the secret source of a club longevity and culture. And a well-run election is the difference between a club that will thrive for decades, maybe even centuries, who knows? Now we are on our second centuries as an organization. And also, this is what makes a difference with a club that will potentially and unfortunately quietly fades away. So this is a beautiful little summary that I would like all of you to keep in mind. So the club officer elections are the secret source of a club longevity and culture, and very much makes the difference between a club that thrives and a club that could fade away. So now that we've covered the ground sort of definition, let's go into why does it matter? So why does it matter to have club officer elections? And I've got a few ideas here. I've put one at the start here, which is very easy for everyone to read. But I'm also keen to hear from everybody else, and I'm sure there will be additional reasons as to why it matters. But preventing the burnout is an important element to keep in mind, simply because at the end of the day, we are all volunteers, club officers. Just like members, we are all volunteers. And those leadership roles are a little bit like a marathon. It's not a sprint. And like any runner, although I'm not necessarily a very keen runner, but I know a little bit about running, it's all in the long term. It's all in the regular practice. And in order to avoid that burnout, we need to have fresh ideas coming in from time to time. We need to have fresh perspective and fresh resources coming into the exercise. And that's really important, because we also want our club officers to be high performers as much as possible. And it is therefore important to have that burnout prevention, so that we are not always relying on the same go-to people of a club that will take on the roles over and over again. So that's something to keep in mind as always. It is also an important element in order to create a leadership pipeline. So effective clubs will treat their club officer roles as development roles. And the Pathways Learning program is excellent resource to help our members think about and maybe even deliver some of their objectives as club officers. So that's something to also keep in mind as we think about election, as we are thinking about who might be a club officer for the next term. Now, there are other areas like driving club innovation. So the innovation is a bit of an interesting one because how can we innovate in a club meeting? Well, if you visit different clubs, you will probably realize that everyone that will visit a club will say something along the lines of, we are doing the same thing but differently. And this is really where innovation comes in. We have the Toastmasters framework that really gives us um, the boundaries of what we can and can't do, but within those boundaries that are very large, really, when we think about it, we have a lot of freedom in so many different ways. And every time we bring a new officer, it brings that new, fresh perspective that is very useful and healthy for any organization. Now, this is also, just like any election, in most countries, in most places, it's a democratic engagement. This is something that are done by the members for the members. And of course, we elect members, but those members are just like anybody else. As I mentioned earlier, we are all volunteers. And by being volunteers, we take on a role in order to serve others. And that is very much the ethos of the Toastmasters organization, to provide that servant leadership experience. And a club officer is very much the first step into that potentially very long journey. The last bullet point I have here, it's also good governance and it's good accountability. So governance is an important one because for anybody that has talked to me or met me over the years, you will know that there are certain books, certain manuals that I refer to quite regularly. The Club Leadership Handbook, the Club Constitution, the Toastmasters bylaws, for instance, to name but a few. And governance is all about doing what we do within the confine of what we should be doing. And where do we find information about what we should be doing? All of these documents. And maintaining good governance is so important because it allows us to have a consistent experience, whether we are a club in the UK, whether we are a club in Asia, Africa, the Americas, or Oceania. We are very much the gatekeepers to that good governance. And it sounds like a grand idea, but it really helps us do the right thing at the right time for the benefit of all of our members. And that is certainly an important element to always remember. And I'd like to pause here just for a moment and see if anybody else on this on the call perhaps has any additional ideas as to why it matters to have club officer elections. Hearing no feedback, I will add one more, the bonus one. Club officer election, just like any other special activities or special events that a club might have, is useful in order to build club member engagement. And club member engagement is something that matters so much that it really is paramount to everything that we do. If we have a club with engaged members, members that take active part in the life of a club, as an officer, for instance, that club will most likely thrive, or at the very least, will have a very good reputation and ultimately a good future. And this is what we want as an organization. So, interesting elements here as to why it matters to have club officer elections. Now, how do we do that well? Let me start with a question, and I would really like some numbers shouted out here. So, how many club officer does a club have? I'll give you a clue, it's less than 10.
7.
Please. 7, okay, that's a good number. Any advance on 7? Okay. All right, let's go with 7 and let's see if that's the correct answer. So let's go and have a look. So club officers are the president, VP education, VP membership, VP public relations, secretary, treasurer, sergeant at arms, that's 7. But we have another one. The immediate past president is a club officer. So we have 8 club officers in every club. Now, of course, as it comes to an election, the immediate past president is not elected. In fact, he is the only club officer that is not elected. And is also the only club officer that, if it becomes vacant for whatever reason, does not get replaced. Just a little quirk to the process, but something important to remember. A club officer, we have 8 club officers in our clubs. Those are the ones. Something to always ponder. Now, all officers should be filled with at least a president, a vice president, either education, membership, or public relations, and a secretary must be held by different persons. That is a very, very important one, again, for good governance, but also to ensure that we follow all of our governing document as a club. Very, very important here. So all the club officers should be filled with, at the very minimum, the president, the VP, a VP, and a secretary being different members. Now we have other requirements here. The president and treasurer must also be held by a different member. There are probably 1 or 2 very obvious reasons for that. And it all comes down to accountability and good governance and making sure that the clubs are not run by just one single person. Very important to remember those little elements. And I wanted to get this out of the way early on so that it just sets the scene for everything that we are doing with club elections. Now let's continue. If my slides want to advance, there we go. So as per the club constitution, and if you don't know where to find the club constitution, it will be in the resources link at the end of this presentation. Otherwise, you can find it on the Toastmasters website. It's very much a thrilling read and very useful in more than one occasion, certainly more than just club officer elections. I very much encourage everyone to read the club constitution if you've not done so already. Now, according to that club constitution, there are a few key elements and timings that I would like to share with you for today. So first of all, the elections are done annually, unless there is a addendum to the club bylaws, which is filed and potentially notes 6 monthly election. Typically, that is done only for those clubs that meet on a weekly basis, but something to keep in mind. Now, the nomination should be made by a club nominating committee. Such committee is appointed by the club president and is typically chaired by the immediate past president and is comprising of 3 members where practicable. I'm using the very specific words here from our governing documents, but it is typically a nomination committee chaired by the immediate past president, made up with at least 3 members that will look at the club and propose some nomination, of course, with discussion with the members. The nominating committee is appointed at least 2 weeks prior to the election. And now you might be wondering, when is the election? It is to be held at the first meeting in May. And that is an important one to keep in mind. So with all of that, it means that the nominating committee, and if we have presidents listening to this, your role is to nominate your nominating committee chair and committee probably no later than the middle of April, which is essentially only about a month away. So it's very much a good time to think about who will be chairing your nominating committee if your immediate past president is unable to do so, and who will be part of that committee. Now, a couple of notes here that I also want to mention, because it is part of the election, it's part of the process, and it is part of the important information that we should all remember. So any vacancy should be filled at the earliest opportunity. So please do not wait the annual elections to fill a vacancy. That will not be good practice. That will certainly create some challenges within the club. So definitely worth mentioning. The other thing worth mentioning is that as a club president, you may not be re-elected for 2 consecutive one-year terms. You can be re-elected for 2 consecutive 6-monthly terms, but you may only serve 1 year as a club president. Very important to keep in mind. Now, let's talk a little bit more on the admin side. So at the election, we have a quorum to meet, and that quorum is half of the active club members. Now, every club is well within its right to define and specify what an active club member means, but it is certainly something that I would encourage all club executive committees to think very, very carefully about and consider the quorum, the active membership, and how those elections will be held in May this year. Now, how do we continue with this process? So we will have at the club elections a report from the nominating committee, and that report will be shared with all of the club members. Again, it's very simply to be open so that there is no surprise and everybody is very well aware in advance of the elections who will be standing for the roles, perhaps also where there may be some vacancies and where floor nominations will also be accepted. The club members, all of the club members, and that is also part of the process in preparation for the club elections, should receive all the resources that are important for making everyone's mind up as to whether or not to run for an office. And those resources may include some of the resources I will share with you this evening, but they could be all additional resources that the club might have. Very important because those resources are here to help guide our members to decide whether or not they may want to be a club officer. Now, you might be wondering, can anyone be a club officer? Yes, probably, right? Absolutely anyone can be a club officer. And in fact, according to the Toastmasters promise that every member has signed in joining this organization, you've also agreed as a member to step up as an officer when called upon to do so. And this is something to always keep in mind, is that we as members are not only eligible to be a club officer, but it is almost one of our duties, one of our calling to become a club officer at some point. So let's keep that in mind because it is an important element to add to the equation when discussing who may be an officer at a future election. Now, the election process, you see here, this is a screenshot because why reinvent the wheel when the wheel is already invented? This is a screenshot from, have a guess, the Club Leadership Handbook. So the Club Leadership Handbook provides a very specific election process, which I will detail very, very, very shortly. And again, just like most things within Toastmasters, every time there is a question, we have resources available, whether it's a bylaw, whether it's a constitution, whether it's a manual that will help us understand and follow a particular process. Club officer elections is no different. That process is clearly detailed in the club leadership manual. So how does that work? The nominations will be accepted by the for the office of club president and every subsequent roles. The presiding officer will be asking for seconding speeches. The nominee will have to accept that nomination and will be able to give a 2-minute speech as to why they would like to stand. And by the way, that is also true even if it is an uncontested position. It's always not good to know why a member wants to be a club officer. Additional nominations for the office in being elected are open. And if there are others, we will then repeat the different process where each additional nomination allowed to provide a speech and a seconding speech as well. The members will then cast their ballots. Ideally, this is a secret ballot. If just a little twist to this, if there is only one member up for an election for a role, you may decide to cast a single ballot and elect without objection that particular member. The winner is announced, and we repeat for the 7 elective club officers. And that is the process. Really, really straightforward. Now let's continue. What resources do we have? And let's go back a little bit to some important information. So now that we've talked about the process, now we've talked about the reasons why it matters to have club officer elections, let's go through some of the useful resources that you might want to use in preparation for the elections, but also to help your members think about those roles. So for every role, there is a short summary. I've put the club president role summary here, but all of the other roles have a similarly defined summary, which is a single one-page document that defines the role, what it is, the responsibilities, and the skills learned as well, which is very useful and certainly what's the word? Mind-opening, if I can use that term here. What else have we got? We have other resources, and I've used here an example from a recent club election, recent as in this last term, 2025-26, from the Tube Talk club elections, which defines a very specific agenda. Again, following exactly what the club leadership manual defines. But again, it's important to have an agenda when you do your elections. And dare I say it, perhaps even have an entire meeting dedicated to the election. Because guess what? If you remember what I mentioned earlier, there will be multiple speeches given at that meeting. Those speeches perhaps could form part of some sort of project within the learning program that we have. And even if they do not fit specifically in a project, they are certainly supportive to that education program. So if you want an example agenda, this is a very good one and a very detailed one as well, which is very important and very useful. A nomination report, there is a template for the nomination report. So if you are an immediate past president and wonder, oh, how do I capture the nomination? How do I write this report in order to be shared with the club members? There is a nomination report template that exists. And at the end of the election process, some clubs do, many clubs do not, which is, in my perspective, perhaps a bit of a shame. But it is so important to formally install the club officers once they are elected. And it's also a great occasion to have maybe an area director, maybe a division director, maybe a district leadership team member come to your club at your club officer election so that they can perform the installation ceremony. And it's a somewhat formal, but a very important element because it really puts in perspective the importance and the reasons why the office of president or VPE and so on are being taken up by the members. So that script is available. If you do not want to invite a district leader to perform that installation ceremony, that's okay. The script can be done, can be followed by anyone, and it's very detailed. All you have to do is to fill the blanks with the names and the club name. Very, very useful. And I definitely encourage everyone to think about it because it just creates a little bit of formality to the election that really enhances, I guess, the membership experience and try it. you will see what I mean once you've experienced one of those installation ceremonies. It's a very nice feeling for the club members, but also the newly elected officers. What else have we got? As I shared with you, there are a number of available links that I've shared with you and talked about briefly today. Leadership Handbook, Club Officer Roles and Real World Skills. I'll share with you a screenshot because I couldn't quite get those in the slide for some reason. I've talked about the club officer roles, the summary. There are also some tutorials that you can follow online. There are also some self-evaluation that you might be able to perform at several points during your tenure as a club officer. If everything that I've talked about is still unclear, there are additional video resources created by Toastmasters International describing the election process as well. So I've put the link here. At the end of a tenure as a club officer, you may want to do a 360 evaluation. You don't have to, but it's quite a useful exercise just to hear how you perform by your peers. It's a useful exercise to go through. The club officer agreement and release statement. This is a form that every newly elected club officer needs to sign that very much defines basically all of the responsibilities, but also the important elements that you agree to do whilst performing the role of a club officer. Very important. I've put a link to the installation script, Club Leadership Committee report template. If you are already a club officer, I have no doubt that you know the Digital Club Officer Toolkit, also available on the Toastmasters website. And for good measures, I've added the club constitution as well, in case it becomes difficult to find, as well as the club officer election FAQ that's also available on the Toastmasters website. So those are the slides I wanted to share with you. I just wanted to share with you these additional resources. First of all, this is a great example of an article that our district produced last year that very much defines in very clear terms the process of election that happened at Barking Toastmasters. Something that you may want to read as well. Contains a bunch of links also to different resources, which is always nice to see. The club officer real world skills. This is a document I think that Toastmasters published very recently in the last few weeks, I believe. And if not, I've probably missed it. But this is something that came up in the leadership newsletter recently. And it very much gives you a summary of what you will do as a club president, as well as some real world skills that you'll be able to learn as a president. And the same is true for all of the other roles. So something that I definitely encourage everyone to take a look and maybe share with your club members as well, so that you are able to provide some useful information to your members that may consider becoming a club officer. The Toastmasters promise, as I mentioned, the beautiful quote here right in the middle: to serve, you promise as a club member to serve your club as an officer when called upon to do so. You know, this is an important one to always remind ourselves that as a member, this is what we are committing to do. The Club Leadership Handbook. This is the page I got the process that I shared with you earlier. The club constitution with Article 6 in particular, that talks about the different officers as well as the terms of office and other important considerations. The club officer tools, so this is the digital toolkit that I shared with you. So this is the link I shared with you, and you'll see a bunch of useful information, like the leader letter, the role descriptions, club officer tutorials, and many other resources. And there is a lot of information here. I'm not going to delve into every single one of those links, but it is important to take a look at them as you become officers. Just to look at one in particular, the club officer roles. Each role has the summary, a tutorial, and a self-evaluation form. If you're VPPR, there will be a bonus VPPR resources, templates for press releases and things of this nature, all the way to the immediate past president that also contains a role summary. So the 8 club officer roles are nicely summarized here. The videos I was talking about, there are a couple of 5-minute videos produced by Toastmasters that really go through all of what we've covered today in literally 5 minutes. So if you want a bite-sized learning, those are great videos to look at as well. The club officer agreement and release statement. This is what you are agreeing to do, and this is where you sign to confirm that you are agreeing to follow and do a number of things on behalf of your clubs as an officer. And last but not least, the FAQ that is also available on the Toastmasters website is something that I wanted to share with you here because it's, I think, quite an important one to cover as well. But with that in mind, I have covered in just about 30 minutes everything that I wanted to share with you in regards to club elections, and I'll be very happy to open the floor for questions if you have any. Thank you, everyone.
Fabulous. Thank you very much indeed, Arnaud. That was fascinating. There's so much information on Toastmasters International. To be honest, I had no idea. I think they have been adding to it over the years, but it's very comprehensive. I had no idea. No idea. I saw your name on that document, so congratulations to you too. Fantastic. Oh no, I do have a question, and that is, how do we encourage members to step up into those club officer roles? I love that document and I read it about the benefits of doing the roles and how that translates into careers and real world. But we still get down to trying to persuade members to step up into the club officer role. What are your recommendations?
There is no magic bullet, is where I would start.
Oh, shame.
And it's a shame, isn't it? One of the, and this is something I've coined many years ago. Succession planning for club officers starts on the 1st of July the prior year. So as you take office, it is very much your duty as a club officer, any role, whether you are a president or a sergeant at arms, it doesn't matter. It is important from day one to start looking at who might be the next president, who might be the next VPE, who might be the next club secretary. And it's almost like a giveaway statement, but it is an important one to always keep in mind, because as a club officer, when you keep that in mind, you will also see as the year progresses, and I've actually got in my clubs a couple of very good examples. I'm not going to share because I don't want to share names necessarily at this stage, but you actually see members developing in certain ways. You see members sometimes willing to step up and do certain activities on behalf of the club. You know, somebody that will be volunteering to be a contest chair, for instance, could very well be somebody that is vested enough to consider becoming a club officer. Somebody that is always arriving early might want to consider becoming a sergeant at arms because, you know, they are prompt and they are committed to always be there on time and ahead of time. So very important skills that those members might bring to the committee. So this is one of the one way to think about it as a club officer, you know, to encourage and essentially do a bit of talent spotting throughout the year. So that's one element. The other thing, in order to encourage club officers to, well, members to step up as club officers, is to have excellent meetings. Because if we have an excellent meeting, they may well want to continue that legacy. And this is important to also keep in mind. And how we make excellent meeting, there's not a single recipe. There are many recipes. It's just like cooking. Everybody likes different things, but there are some key elements. Meetings that are complete ahead of times, meetings that are varied throughout the year, meetings that have special guests invited to speak, members that are encouraged to step up and maybe sort of go slightly outside of the box. All of those excellent meeting tips should really be part of the toolkit to encourage members to step up for club officer roles. And maybe I will add one little sprinkle to that little recipe, and that is also recognition. And that little sprinkle is also one of the cornerstone of what we do at Toastmasters, is that we recognize our members for their achievements. And by recognizing for their achievement, I don't mean just Pathways level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 DTM achievements. I mean achievements with a capital A. In fact, capital letters from start to finish. Somebody in a club might have landed a new job. This is very much cause for celebration. Of course, not everybody might want to share that news, but those that do want to share that news, let's make it an event. Let's celebrate as a club. Very important. Somebody that just got promoted, why not talk about that promotion? And again, all of those opportunities are celebration opportunities, they are speaking opportunities, and they are very likely, not always, but very likely also opportunities to help younger members, newer members to the club understand how that particular person benefited from the program in achieving whatever they achieved, getting a new job, getting promoted, and so on and so forth. And, I use professional examples, but there are many, many other ones. You can get married, you can, maybe you've delivered a best man speech, and, this is something that could be inspirational for others. So finding those moments of celebration, those moments of real enjoyment are all part of the toolkit that I would very much think would help. Again, it's not a magic bullet, but they do help.
Yeah, thank you. Very wise words. Do we have any questions for Arnaud? You can put them in the chat or go off mute and ask. I also think that it's useful for members to know what goes on behind the scenes. They see the president, they see the sergeant at arms. Yes, they will have met the VPM, and they will know the VPE sets up the agenda. Renewals time, they'll know there is a treasurer, and they'll assume there's a secretary just to keep everything in order. But I think it's quite useful for those committee officers to have a time in a meeting where they can share what they do prior to, obviously, the May club elections, and just to make it aware of what their role is. Because a lot of people don't realize, they come to the meetings, they give their speeches, and they go home. They don't realize what goes on behind.
Very nicely put. And in order to maybe help club members see what happens beyond the club, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 things that are probably worth mentioning. One is, why not invite members, period, to area, division, district contest? Why not invite members to club officer training or Toastmasters Leadership Institute? Why not invite members to maybe a ceremony organized by a club for their 10th, 20th, 30th, 50th birthday? Why not? And to wrap it all into a recent enhancement to the Pathways experience, there are some speech series that we are now required to do. And one of those is called Going Beyond the Club. So very much an encouragement to everyone. When you get to the stage at level 3 and beyond and need to deliver some of those speeches, consider delivering this Going Beyond the Club speech. And you will see the eyes open in your club. Maybe not everyone, but you'll see some sparkle in some members thinking, "Ooh, I didn't know we could do all of this in Toastmasters." So that's a
Okay.
great cue. Thank you very much, Janet, for
Is that
bringing
in
this up.
Pathways?
It's part of the Success Leadership series, I believe.
Oh, yeah, the new enhancements for
Mm-hmm.
Pathways. Right. Yes, I wasn't aware of that one. Learn something new every day in
Every day.
Toastmasters.
I think
Fabulous.
it's in level 5 as well in presentation mastery.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Beverly.
I had done something going beyond the club. I think it was with external organizations, like community organizations.
Mm.
But it's still going outside the club.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for that very comprehensive and educational report then, Arnaud, on managing club officer elections. And I wish you all the very best in running your club officer elections. So thank you very much indeed, and I wish you all the best for the rest.